welcome to Journey Church Online. We are delighted that you're a part of this worship experience. I'm Michael Duvall, lead pastor, and my prayer is that you will experience the grace and mercy and love of Christ through this online service. Today, at the end of the service, we will be celebrating communion or the Lord's Supper. And I invite you now to get elements that you could use to be a part of this at the end of the service. We are so glad that you want to worship God with us in a powerful way today, and we look forward as the band comes now to lead us in worship.
Sound. See the heavens open up, hear the music coming down. Nothing's gonna separate us from the Father's love. I can't help but celebrate because we're not alone. If God is on our side, who can be against us? If God is on our side, we won't be afraid. Though the mountains may fall and the skies will crumble, there ain't nothing gonna stand in our way. Come on down to the riverside, I'll wash it all away. Leave behind your troubled mind for an uncloudy day. Nothing's gonna separate us from the Father's love. I can't help but celebrate because we're not alone. If God is on our side, who can be against us? If God is on our side, we won't be afraid. Though the mountains may fall and the sky will crumble, there ain't nothing gonna stand in our way. Nothing's gonna stand in our way. If God is on our side, who can be against us? If God is on our side, we won't be afraid. Though the mountains may fall and the skies will crumble, there ain't nothing gonna stand in our way. Oh yeah, if God is on our side, who can be against us? If God is on our side, we won't be afraid. Though the mountains may fall and the skies will crumble, there ain't nothing gonna stand in our way. If God is on our side, who can be against us? If God is on our side, we won't be afraid. Though the mountains may fall and the sky will crumble, there ain't nothing gonna stand in our way. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up patch me up like you do every time I get amnesia. I forget that you keep coming around. There ain't no way you will ever let me down. Good God Almighty, I hope you'll find me praising your name no matter what comes. 'Cause I know where I'd be without your mercy. So I keep praising your name at the top of my lungs. Tell me, is he good? He's good. Tell me, is he God? He's God. He is good, God Almighty. You say your love goes on forever, that your mercy never stops. So why would I assume you'd be somebody that you're not? Like the sun in the morning, I know you're gonna be there every day. So what on earth could make me be afraid? Good God Almighty, I hope you'll find me praising your name no matter what comes. 'Cause I know where I'd be without your mercy. So I keep praising your name at the top of my lungs. Tell me, is he good? He's good. Tell me, is he God? He's God. He is good, God Almighty. Praise him in the morning, praise him in the noontime, praise him when the sun goes down. Love him in the morning, love him in the noontime, love him when the sun goes down. Good God Almighty, I hope you'll find me praising your name no matter what comes. 'Cause I know where I'd be without your mercy. So I keep praising your name at the top of my lungs. Tell me, is he good? He's good. Tell me, is he God? He's God. He is good, God Almighty. Jesus in the morning, Jesus in the noontime, Jesus when the sun goes down. Jesus in the morning, Jesus in the noontime, Jesus when the sun goes down.
Always, usually, maybe, never. God is always absent. God is usually absent. God may be absent. God is never absent. All four of these statements are true. All four of these statements are true at the same time. All four of these statements are true at the same time without any contradiction. Always, usually, maybe, never. And the only way we will ever come to terms with this idea, which is seemingly inconsistent, is if we give up the preconception that our God is static. Because sometimes God is present, and sometimes God is absent, and at all times He is all things because God is always dynamic. He can be nowhere on earth, yet is omnipresent. He can choose to be transparent to one, but to another be resplendent. He can be itinerant in some respects, and yet in others be a resident. He is the transcendent Father who in the Son is immensely immanent. God's presence and absence may seem to be in competition, but that's because we're only viewing them with the limits of our own cognition. You see, God is not physically here right now. He is always absent in His actuality. God is not often seen with human eyes. He is usually absent in His visibility. God is not present with the lost as He is with the saved. He may be absent relationally, but God is present in His sustaining power. He is never absent generally. And what causes this perceived contradiction is in fact God's consistency. What creates a schism in our minds really comes from God's uniformity. It is His uncompromising justice and His endless, inexhaustible grace that creates this present and absent state. For if He stayed present in the way He did in Eden's garden, then fallen humanity as we know it would have long since departed. So His absence is grace, as is His continuing presence. For He didn't stay and destroy us, nor did He abandon us at our sin's first occurrence. His absence is kindness, yet His presence did not retire. For without the former we would be abolished, but without the latter we would expire. He withdrew to preserve us, but stayed near so that His plan might transpire. Because God is absent in the way we most desire, but He's present in the way we most require. So He is always absent, but present forever. Always, usually, maybe, never.
Faith. Are you trying to figure it out? Would you say in this tumultuous time in which we live that your faith is floundering? Would you say, as far as you're concerned, faith seems pretty much irrelevant? Would you say you're not even sure what faith means to you? Life is so uncertain. How can you be sure of much of anything right now? When it comes to the Christian faith, the Bible is full of narratives about faith in the midst of extraordinary uncertainty. The Bible includes story after story of people whose faith story challenges what a lot of us may think faith is even all about. There's the story in the Old Testament of a teenager named Joseph. He had a bunch of brothers who, let's just say, there was intense sibling rivalry among them. So much so that the brothers hated Joseph and threw him into a well. Helpless, he hears his brothers having a conversation that went something like this: should we sell him or should we kill him? I think we should sell him into slavery. That way we'll get some money from his worthless life. No, I think we should kill him. I'm sick of seeing his arrogant face. Now, you and I may have disagreements with our siblings, but how many of us are despised by our siblings as much as Joseph? In that well, he must have felt hopeless as well as helpless. The only thing that must have been certain to him was that his life was pretty much over. Where was God then? What good was faith then? Biblical faith holds that though life is uncertain, God is not. Say that with me. Though life is uncertain, God is not. God was at work in Joseph's life, even when Joseph could not see it. Even though he experienced brokenness again and again, eventually God would do something amazing in Joseph's life through faith, as Joseph would save the lives of many people from starvation. There's the story in the Old Testament of Moses. His mother, who was Hebrew, gave birth to him when God's people were enslaved in Egypt. The Egyptian king decided to murder all the baby boys born to God's people because he thought there were too many of them, and he thought they were a threat to his political power. Moses' mother places her newborn son in a basket and shoves him out to float in the Nile River. It seems like it's between the crocodiles and the Egyptian butchers as to who would kill Moses first. Where was God then? What good was faith then? Again, biblical faith reveals that though life is uncertain, God is not. God was at work in Moses' life even when Moses could not initially see it. Even though Moses experienced repeated heartache and hardship, eventually God would do something amazing in Moses' life through faith. as Moses rescued God's people from years and years of brutal slavery in Egypt through the working of God in power. God's people had cried out to the Lord in the midst of their slavery for 400 years that God would send them a deliverer before Moses was used by God to begin leading them to the promised land. And us, we may pray to God for 4 days. And when our prayers aren't answered in the way we want, we may question if there is a God. We may question the whole faith thing. There's the story in the Old Testament of King David. He's awakened one night to discover that his favorite son was leading an insurrection against him. His son had rallied an army that was about to invade the capital city so he could replace his father as king. Those of us who are parents may have problems with our kids, but how many of us have kids who want to destroy us? David barely escaped with his life. Where was God then? What good was faith then? Biblical faith again and again shows us that though life is uncertain, God is not. God was at work in David's life even when David could not see it. Even though David experienced betrayal and rejection in life, eventually God would do something amazing in David's life through faith, because from David's descendants would come the Savior of the world, Jesus. So, how are we to understand the meaning of faith given all the brokenness and heartache and hardship and betrayal and rejection we may experience in life? Hebrews 11:1 says, "Faith is the assurance of things you have hoped for, the absolute conviction that there are realities you've never seen." We may have trouble seeing what in the world God is doing. Faith is the hope, the anticipation, the absolute conviction that God is at work in the world even when we have trouble perceiving it. Faith is believing that the God who is perfect love is working in the world to rescue us from our human brokenness and selfishness and sin, though we struggle to see God at work precisely because of our human brokenness and selfishness and sin. Let's be honest. How many of us right now are having trouble with faith? We live in the midst of an extraordinary time of uncertainty. There is so much human brokenness and selfishness and sin. We want a faith that assures us that we are going to get to live life the way we want, without all the brokenness and heartache and hardship and betrayal and rejection that we experience in life. We want a life that goes well on Monday, and even better on Tuesday when we get a bonus at our job, and even better on Wednesday when we get a major promotion at our job, and even better on Thursday when we find that our kids all got full scholarships to college, and then even better on Friday when we win Mega Millions lottery. We want to live happily ever after with a wrinkle-free life that's carefree and without troubles. That's what we want from a faith in God. But in narrative after narrative in the Bible, we discover that God never promises any of that for those who embrace genuine faith. Faith is trusting that God is trustworthy even when life isn't going well or the way we had planned. When Jesus' ministry began, thousands of people gathered around him, hanging on his every word when he spoke. There was momentum. The crowds were getting bigger and bigger. But then the momentum turned around. Things started not to go well. Jesus' disciples heard rumors that there was growing opposition and that Jesus was going to be arrested. And they knew if Jesus went down, they would go down with him. It was a time filled with uncertainty, and they struggled to understand. If God was with you, things were supposed to get better and better, right? But things were getting bad, not better. And the way of Jesus, the loving people enough to sacrifice for others, to act selflessly for others, regardless of the cost, the crowds weren't sure they wanted to have that kind of faith. So the crowds got less and less. In fact, the time came when the disciples with themselves abandoned Jesus. They fell away from faith. How many of us right now are saying to ourselves, how could they? How could they turn their backs on Jesus and His way of sacrificial love? We would never do that. Like Peter, we might protest and say, it doesn't matter who else turns his back on you, I will never desert you. But in this uncertain, threatening time, how many people are questioning faith, are turning away from God and putting their faith in other things? How many people are giving up on God, are giving up on abandoning God's church? With all the uncertainties at school, at work, in our culture, in partisan politics, how is it possible to have a faith in God? Those of us who put our faith in Jesus choose to embrace as our story the story of the Bible. The story that faith is not to be equated with prosperity and a problem-free life. Faith is believing that in times of uncertainty and brokenness, God may choose to do His most amazing work. It was true in the life of Joseph and Moses and David. And it may be true in our lives as well, if we have faith in, if we place our trust in the God whose ways are not our ways and whose timing is not our timing. If you could have asked the disciples when was the darkest moment as they followed Jesus, when did they have the least amount of hope, when they thought they had wasted their time with the whole faith in Jesus thing because it seemed to them God was absent and God wasn't up to anything, they probably would have answered, it was when Jesus was dying on the cross. But it was precisely at that time that amazingly God was at work unseen in accomplishing the salvation, the rescuing of the world from brokenness and selfishness and sin. The disciples would have thought it was game over, but it really was just the beginning of something brand new, empowered by God's goodness and grace, even in the midst of the uncertainty and heartache of it all, because the cross was not the end of the story. God overcame even the power of death through the resurrection of Jesus that made all things new, and gives hope even in the darkest of times because it shows that God is not through with us yet. God chooses to act redemptively in times of great personal or national brokenness. And when faith begins to waver, when doubts start to creep in, and uncertainty seems to be increasing exponentially, by faith, we can be certain that God is working, even when it does not seem apparent to us. The Apostle Paul wrote, "We know that in all things God works for good with those who love Him, those whom He has called according to His purpose." If you're struggling because you or someone you love is grappling with illness, or you're struggling because you just don't know how much longer you can put up with the job you're in. Or you're struggling because people you care about have turned their backs on you. Or you're struggling because you've fallen so far behind in school. Or you're struggling because you want desperately to be in a relationship in which you are truly cared for, but right now you're not. And you're questioning, where is God? And what's the use of faith? I hope you'll recognize that you are not alone. Though you may not see it, God is not absent. God is working in all things with those who love Him. Note that, with those who love Him. In the Greek language that Paul wrote, the literal meaning in this verse is that God cooperates with those who love Him in accomplishing God's work. This means that when it comes to faith, each one of us has to do our part in cooperation with God in all things so that God's purposes for us will be accomplished. This means that we are called to embrace the extraordinary courage of faith and cooperate with the God who is at work in all things for love to prevail in ways that may not seem immediately evident. Andy Stanley tells of when he was in Washington, D.C. for a national prayer service. He and a group of others were in the National Cathedral and were to have the opportunity to meet President Barack Obama. Stanley was in line behind a man named Reverend Otis Moses, whom he was meeting for the first time. Reverend Moses, who was African American, shared part of his story. He was born in Georgia in 1935. When he was 16, he was orphaned, both of his parents having died. When he was 19, he put his faith in Jesus and felt called to be a preacher. He connected with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and marched with him in Selma and in Washington, D.C. Reverend Moses became a part of the core group of men and women with Dr. King who experienced hatred and racism and evil in ways many of us would have a hard time imagining. And yet through it all, he held fast to a faith that believed God was at work even in the dark times, even when it seemed God was absent or God wasn't doing anything. Right in the middle of Reverend Moses sharing his story, he stopped talking and he just kind of stared off into space. And then out of the blue he said, "We know that in all things God works for good with those who love Him." And then there was a long pause. Andy Stanley thought to himself, the all things that Reverend Moses had experienced were so much different than what most all of us have experienced. The rejection, the despising, the loathing, the violence. Then Reverend Moses simply said, "Sometimes it takes a while." At that very moment, around the corner came the first African American president of the United States. Reverend Moses went forward and shook the president's hand. Here this man was, in his mid-70s, who was able to say with absolute confidence, even with all the suffering he'd experienced, that God is active, God is present, God is at work in all things for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. None of us knows what's going to happen next. None of us knows what the future holds. But by faith, we can know who holds the future, even more, who is the future. Life is uncertain, but God is not. Sometimes it takes a while for God's purposes to be fulfilled. Even though you may have trouble seeing it, God is working for love and justice and right to prevail. The question is, will you embrace a faith in God who loves you more than you can comprehend? Will you trust your whole life in faith to the God who offers you a lifeline in tumultuous times and the assurance that God's love will ultimately win out, even if it takes a while? Right now, I want to offer you an opportunity for you to embrace faith in Jesus as the Lord of your life and as your Savior. So I invite you right now to bow your heads and close your eyes. And if you have never before committed yourself in faith to follow Jesus, I invite you to pray silently along with me. All powerful, all merciful, and all forgiving God, right now, I want to move beyond playing any games. I want to be real, God. And so, as best I know how, I admit, Lord, my selfishness and my sin and my focusing on what I want. And God, I ask you to forgive me. I ask you to cleanse me. I ask you to remove the guilt and the shame of my life. And I ask for a fresh start as I turn away from those things, God, that separate me from you. And Lord, I believe with all of my heart that you sent Jesus into the world, that he died for my sins. He was broken for my sins to remove the brokenness of my life. He was buried in the tomb and he was raised on the third day to new life. And because of that, God, you offer me new life, resurrection life. And so I embrace that now through faith. And Heavenly Father, I commit myself, not just for this moment, for all the days of my life, to seek to live the Jesus way of selfless, sacrificial, serving love. A love that will fill up my inner being and then flows out to people all around me. It blesses me and other people because I have known you, God, and your presence in my life. And so now I accept you fully without reservation in becoming a Christian, a follower of Jesus. I pray this in his never-failing love. Amen. For almost 2,000 years, followers of Jesus have engaged in a profound, meaningful, powerful practice of faith. It is a time of remembering Jesus' sacrifice, his never-failing love for us. Jesus was gathered in an upper room with his disciples, those closest to him. And he wanted them to be able to remember and reflect on the meaning of his sacrificial death. And so he took bread and he said, "This is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Would you take the bread? Lord Jesus, as we take the bread, we realize how unworthy we are, God, of your sacrificial death and love for us. How your body was broken, how you endured pain as a way of rescuing us from our brokenness and sin. Though we are not worthy, we now remember your sacrifice for us that we can never repay, but is a gift of grace. Amen. Then Jesus took a cup and he said, "This is the new covenant in my blood. As often as you drink it, do so in remembrance of me." I invite you to take the cup. Oh, Jesus, it's hard for us to fathom how your blood was shed for us, how that crown of thorns was pressed down on your head and blood flowed, how the spear pierced your side and the blood flowed, how your hands and feet were nailed to the cross and the blood flowed. And though we cannot comprehend it, Lord, we have a spirit of gratitude and thankfulness that through your suffering, through your pain, comes the redemption, the saving of the world, the saving of our very lives as we put our faith in Jesus. May we hold fast to the hope, God, that one day those of us who trust in you will gather together at the heavenly banquet table to take the bread and the cup anew, to experience you face to face and to know the joy that comes from being in your holy presence. We pray this in Christ our hope. Amen.
Yeah. All right, you all put your hands together out there. Let's raise our voices to the Lord. God, we thank you so much. We worship you for who you are. Yes. Who breaks the power? Sing it out. Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder and leaves us breathless in awe and wonder? The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King of glory. Who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Oh, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. All that you've done for me.
If you today prayed that prayer of commitment and faith, or even if you didn't, but you have questions about how to do that, I invite you to go to journeyconnection.com, complete the eConnect card there online, send that in to us that we might communicate with you and help you to find out how it is you move forward in the journey of faith. At Journey, we really do want to help people experience God's love in a way that changes us for all time on this earth and for eternity. Please allow us the privilege of helping you to know the fullness of God's love and grace and mercy in your life. For those of you who are already followers of Jesus, we want to offer you the opportunity today to contribute financially to support the life-changing ministries of this church that help people know Christ in ways that radically change their family life, radically change how they work in the world, radically change their relationships. One of the ways that we want to partner in changing lives in our community is that we have mission partners. And one of the mission partners of Journey Church is called God's Pit Crew. They respond to disasters here in the United States and around the world. And when you contribute to Journey, a part of those funds go to mission partners like God's Pit Crew, because we need to share the love of Christ with all people everywhere. We're thankful for your generosity and your wanting to be a part of that. I pray God's blessings on you in this week to come, and that you will know with all certainty that you have been anchored in faith. Thanks so much.
Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave.